The formal dinner was supposed to be a peaceful family reunion, but the tension in the dining room was thick enough to cut with a knife. As my husband's wealthy relatives passed around silver platters and traded arrogant glances, my 6-year-old granddaughter, Lily, slid a folded cloth napkin under my plate. I unfolded it beneath the table, expecting a messy child's doodle. Instead, written in shaky, frantic crayon were 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Pretend you're sick. Leave now." My heart hammered against my ribs. Lily was trembling, staring at her plate, too afraid to look up. 10 minutes later, as I frantically faked a sudden migraine and hurried toward my car, a deafening explosion shattered the night sky behind us, lighting up the entire driveway in flames. That napkin didn't just save my life. It exposed a dark, lethal secret my family had been hiding for decades. My name is Clara Vance. At 28 years old, I always considered myself a grounded, sensible person. As a historical archivist, I spent my days quietly buried in old documents, far away from high-stakes drama. But all of that changed the moment I married into the Sterling family, a clan whose polished wealth masked a terrifying, rot-filled core. Tonight was Uncle Julian's annual estate dinner, held at his sprawling, isolated mansion. I sat at the long mahogany table, clutching my glass of water just to keep my hands from shaking. The air was suffocating, heavy with the scent of expensive wine and quiet hostility. Every joke Julian made carried a subtle jab at my modest background, and his sons exchanged smirks like sharks circling blood in the water. I was an outsider, and they made sure I felt it. Then I looked across the table at 6-year-old Lily, my husband's niece. She was unnaturally still, her small fingers tightly gripping a linen napkin. She wasn't eating. Her big, dark eyes were wide with a silent, paralyzing terror. When Julian turned his back to dish out the roast, Lily leaned across the table under the pretense of dropping a utensil. Rapidly, she slid a crumpled piece of paper under my salad plate. She didn't make a sound, but her eyes begged me to look. Beneath the table, out of sight from the glares of the Sterlings, I unfolded the rough napkin. Scrawled in shaky, frantic red crayon were 4 words that made my stomach drop into a bottomless pit. "Pretend you're sick. Leave now." A cold sweat broke out across my neck. I looked up from the napkin, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Lily was staring down at her lap, her little shoulders trembling violently. I knew if I hesitated, if I let Julian or his sons catch even a glimpse of suspicion on my face, we might never leave that dining room. I dropped my fork onto the porcelain plate with a loud, sudden clatter. Gazing up at Julian, I pressed a hand to my forehead, letting my voice shake just enough to sound genuine. "I'm so sorry, Julian," I stammered, swaying slightly in my seat. A sudden, blinding migraine just hit me. "I feel terribly nauseous. I need to get home right away." Julian's eyes narrowed into sharp slits, a flash of annoyance crossing his face before he smoothed it over with a rigid, fake smile. "Nonsense, Clara. Stay in the guest study down the hall. Rest there while we finish dinner." The study. The exact room where he had insisted I go after dinner to sign the family trust documents. "No, I need my medicine," I insisted, grabbing my purse and reaching out to slide Lily's hand into mine. "Lily can come with me to grab it from the car." We didn't walk. We practically sprinted down the long, quiet driveway. 10 minutes later, just as I unlocked my car doors, a deafening shockwave shattered the night air. A roar of thunderous orange flames erupted behind us as the detached guest study blew apart, sending glass and fiery debris raining down onto the manicured lawn. The force of the blast shook the car, throwing hot air and a shower of sparks over the windshield. I shoved Lily into the back seat, scrambled into the driver's side, and slammed my foot onto the gas. My hands were shaking uncontrollably on the steering wheel as the flames painted the night sky a violent shade of red in my rearview mirror. We drove for 5 agonizing miles in complete silence before I finally pulled off into the parking lot of an abandoned gas station. My lungs burned as I threw the car into park, turned around, and looked at the little girl sitting in the back seat. Lily had her knees pulled up to her chest, her pale face streaked with silent tears. "Lily, I whispered, my voice trembling as I reached back to take her small, cold hand. Sweetheart, look at me. You're safe now. I promise you're safe. But I need you to tell me. How did you know? Lily swallowed hard, taking a ragged, hitching breath. I went to get my doll from the hallway before dinner. She whimpered, her tiny voice barely louder than a whisper. Uncle Julian and the others were inside his office. The door was open just a little bit. She wiped her nose with her sleeve, her dark eyes filled with a horror no 6-year-old should ever know. Uncle Julian said you were getting too close to the old accounting files, she continued, her voice shaking. He told Uncle Mark that the gas line in the guest study was turned on. He said when you went in there after dinner to turn on the lamp and read the papers, the whole room would blow up and everyone would think it was just a tragic accident. Hearing those words from a 6-year-old child chilled me to the absolute bone. Julian hadn't just tried to murder me. He was willing to kill his own family's peace to hide his crimes. But what Julian didn't realize was that as an archivist, I never leave anything to chance. Earlier that morning, while organizing the family trust documents in that very office, I had noticed massive financial discrepancies, millions embezzled from the estate. Knowing Julian's ruthless nature, I had immediately scanned every single page with my phone, uploading the encrypted digital copies directly to a secure cloud server and my personal attorney. Instead of fleeing the state, I dialed 911, reporting the explosion and requesting immediate police backup at the mansion. Then, taking a deep breath, I turned the car around. When I pulled back up the mansion's burning driveway, emergency sirens were already wailing in the distance. Julian and his son stood on the lawn, put on expressions of grief painted across their faces for the gathering neighbors. They believed I was dead, reduced to ash inside that burning study. As I stepped out of the car, perfectly intact, holding Lily's hand, Julian's jaw dropped. The color drained from his face, as if he'd just seen a ghost. Clara, he stammered, stepping backward. You were inside. I was supposed to be, wasn't I, Julian? I said, my voice echoing cold and clear over the sound of approaching fire engines. You rigged the gas line to burn the evidence of your fraud. But I already backed up every single file you tried to destroy. And little Lily, here, dropped something you left behind. I pulled out the crumpled napkin, holding it high as state troopers pulled into the driveway, their red and blue lights flashing across Julian's terrified face. The flashing police lights cast a relentless blue and red glow over Julian's crumbling facade. As the troopers stepped forward, I handed over my phone containing the encrypted digital records, alongside the physical crayon note preserved safely in a clear plastic bag. Julian tried to laugh it off, calling it the wild imagination of a child and a hysterical outsider. But when the arson investigators confirmed that the gas line in the study had been deliberately severed from the outside, his confident tone dissolved into panicked screams. Right there on his manicured lawn, in front of the neighbors he had spent decades trying to impress, Julian and his sons were handcuffed and led away in state trooper vehicles. The federal investigation that followed was swift and devastating. The digital records I provided uncovered a massive network of wire fraud, grand larceny, and corporate embezzlement spanning over 15 years. Julian's entire empire imploded, and he was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. 6 months later, the dust has finally settled. I secured full legal custody of Lily, protecting her from the toxic legacy of the Sterling family. We moved to a quiet coastal town far away from that dark mansion, where the air is sweet and clean. Every time I look at Lily drawing peacefully in her sketchbook, I am reminded of how 4 shaky, red crayon words changed the course of our lives forever. What would you have done if you found a note like that under your plate? Comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far our story has reached.